you who don't know who I am, or I guess who I was, my name's Kimberly. Kimberly Ann Marie Bergalis, and my situation started pretty normally. It was the middle of my junior year at the University of Florida, and I needed to get 2 back molars removed by Dr. Acer. Now, I don't remember much about the appointment aside from it hurting. I had no clue. I mean, it was just less than 4 years later. I'd be dead. Kimberly Bergalis is one of 6 patients infected with AIDS by her dentist. Her father, in an interview in June 1991, stated that Kimberly would like to be dead. Death, as far as she's concerned, would be a relief. Kimberly did end up passing away December 8th of 1991. This is patient A, by Lee Blessing. I started to feel sick in the spring of 1989, so I went to a hematologist. They took blood and ran a lot of tests, so I started having trouble breathing and went to the oncologist. They tested me for cancer. I didn't have cancer. They thought I was just hyperventilating, so they sent me to the local doctor. At least he finally diagnosed me with something. Bilateral pneumocystis pneumonia. Now, I had no idea what that meant, but I was finally hospitalized. And that was the first time they tested me for HIV. Positive. I remember the doctor gave me some time alone before my family came in, and I started to cry. I remember going and looking out the window and seeing the clouds swirling against the sun, and it calmed me. Closed my eyes, and then I heard a voice. And that voice told me everything will be okay, nothing is gonna harm you, and your family's gonna be all right. But when I opened my eyes, there was no one there. My mom. She was the first one to come in. She told me about her parents who died in a car crash years before, and how they'd be waiting in heaven for me alongside Grandma Zablakis. Even their little dog, too. I think if she could have put everybody into heaven for me in that moment, she would have. My dad came in next, and that was so hard. He shook and he cried and he kept saying something had to have gone wrong, and I said, "Dad, just put your head on my shoulder and we'll get through this together," and he just kept repeating that it can't be. But Dad, it just is. So we reported my case to the CDC. They couldn't figure out how I'd been infected. I mean, I hadn't had any of the usual risk factors. I wasn't a drug user, a hemophiliac, and they had a hard time believing I'd never had intercourse. Now that I think about it, it was my mom who first thought of Dr. Acer. I mean, there'd been rumors about him. Some people thought he had AIDS. So I mentioned it to the CDC, but I wasn't told they were investigating anything. But then Jane Pauley had a message for me on the evening news. A young woman in all likelihood has been infected with AIDS by her dentist. No one called to tell me this was gonna be on. I mean, this was the first moment I realized they were lying to me. I mean, they were staring at me right in the face, knowing I had a disease that was going to kill me, and they still refused to tell me the truth. You don't know what to think when you've got this disease. The best experts in the country can't tell you how you've gotten it. Meanwhile, you're hiding it from as many people as possible because you're feeling a kind of pain you've never known. And you feel guilty. You feel guilty because somehow you put this pain onto your family, and you feel guilty because somehow you did this to yourself. But you don't know how. I was called patient A because my name was off limits. And then 2 of Dr. Acer's other patients were discovered, and we had patients B and C. You know, it felt insulting. Like they could never say my name again. And I think the insurance company really thought about going to court until the other 2 patients were discovered. Granted, after that, we did win $1 million settlement. I mean, it was a good time for my family. You know, we'd won that $1 million. I was still gonna have a lot of good days physically, and I did get to do a lot of things I'd never done before. I got to ride in a hot air balloon in Palm Springs. I mean, it was the best, you know, floating there for a few seconds, it felt like I was on a different planet. And then suddenly the balloon made a jump. And I remember thinking, here I am suspended in the air by nothing but heat. I mean, it felt like riding in this hand of God. Gentle, but absolutely terrifying. But somehow I knew, as frightened as I was wherever this hand took me, he was never gonna let me go. I called a few people bastards before I died, but frankly, I don't regret it. I resented what the dentist did, but more so, I resented the authorities who told him he had a right to keep practicing and keep his secret. After all, when you die from a public health policy, I think you have the right to question it pretty strenuously. And in the end, guess who got sick again? More hospital visits, more transfusions. I didn't know what to do. So I started making tapes. I talked to my sisters. You had Allison. She held up pretty well. But then you had Sandra. She cried a lot. I mean, she was only 11, you know, so I would try to think of things that would cheer her up, but anyway, at the end of the night, I was scared to go to sleep. You know, I was scared I wasn't gonna wake up. But then my mom mentioned something I never thought of before. She said, how are you so sure things can't get any worse? I mean, I'd never thought of that. I'd just been thinking about my pain and my misery and why won't God let me go? So it made me think. It made me think about the cemetery I was going to be buried in, and all the names. How I'd be lying on that hill next to my grandma's the blackest. And how God is going to reach down and take my hand. And how this body is just going to be a useless thing on this earth. And then a peace came over me, and I was finally able to sleep.